Talking to a brick is pointless because it will have no reaction. You could tell a brick that it's ugly. All right, you brick, you are the most ugly, bruggedy, tuggedy, puggedy, muggedy looking thing in the world. You suck, brick, but it'll have no reaction. In the same way, you could be super positive to brick. You'd be like, you know what, brick, you're beautiful, you're meaningful, brick. It won't have a reaction. Of course it won't, okay? Because it has no emotions. It's not living. If you were to tell a human the exact same thing, if you were to go up to some human and be like, you are ugly, bro, it will feel it. But how? Like, do the words just leave my mouth and go through the ears of the person I'm targeting to inflict damage? Am I like, do my words become like an object that could like hit them? Like, how am I hurting the person with my words? What about words cause damage to those inflicted? If I were to go up to someone who's been called pretty their entire life and call them pretty, but I do the same thing to someone who has never been called pretty once, it would feel different to both of them, right? Even though it's the same word. So what about words affect people differently? I'm here to tell you that yes, you are meaningful and important. It's just your job to react to it. Don't be a brick. Don't do it. What does that mean? Being introspective. Introspection is taking an inward look in ourselves, right? Into our thoughts and our emotions and twinkering with them and editing them to try to mold our consciousness to think more positively. We start to evaluate our thoughts and learn their significance. It's when we start seeing how our thoughts affect our mood. A reaction to things is just one example of how to start being introspective. I'm not saying the reason why you're sad is because you take in insults and you don't take in compliments. I'm not saying that, right? We don't need someone to tell us we're depressed to know it. You know, we kind of just know, right? It's more of an example of how your thoughts could affect your mood, and how you could actually mess with them and change them, which is something that most of us have never even like thought of doing. You know, our thoughts are ourselves after all, right? You think you don't have any control over it because it's yourself, but in reality you have a lot of control. For example, what I said earlier, if we call someone pretty who has never been called pretty ever in their life, their reaction would be far greater than that of which if we call someone else pretty who gets called it every day, right? My compliment isn't necessarily any less insincere to either parties, right? It's still the same exact words with the same exact message coming from me, yet it's getting interpreted differently by two different people, right? Because the girl who never gets compliments that much, when she gets it, she's like, I'm pretty, whoa. What's her brain telling herself in that moment that's letting her have an increased reaction? That's literally increasing her mood, right? It's not the words giving her more dopamine, it's herself giving her that. Compared to the girl who gets called pretty every day, when she gets pretty for the millionth time, she's like, I know, you know, like sure it feels a little good, but I know, right? What is she telling herself then? Why? It literally makes her not as happy, which makes no sense because they're just words. But our brain is able to literally produce this like happiness for us, and it's able to make us feel generally like these strong emotions, not just because it makes sense to us. Because I haven't been called pretty before, when I get called pretty, it should make me feel more happy. You know? Why? How? Who? Were you not pretty before? Are you pretty now? Like, how does it work? Because it's just yourself telling you this. It's only yourself. What if the girl that gets called pretty every day, when she gets called pretty, she treats it like it's her only time ever being called pretty? You know, and it's obviously easier said than done, but would she possibly be able to, if she could convince herself that it's her first time being called pretty ever, every single time she gets pretty, wouldn't that lead to being more like insanely happy more throughout the day? Introspection usually gets confused with something called mindfulness. Although they're similar, mindfulness is more of the acknowledgement rather than a tool to fix it. For example, would be a train. Being introspective would be, getting on a train, getting off of it to switch trains, maybe altering the track, it'd be all that. Compared to mindfulness would just be watching as a train goes by. A common saying for those who are depressed is that they are living in a world of black and white that can only be described to them as a world full of color. And it's all like, it's really sad, like medically speaking, when you go to a doctor, they're just like, take these meds or go to therapy, right? But what being introspective does, right? Even if, I'm not a doctor, right? I am not a doctor by any means, all right? But what I'm telling you is, if you take an introspective look towards your thoughts, even the thoughts that you think only are seen black and white, the thoughts that can only perceive black and white, maybe when you take a good look in there, just possibly you could find just a glimpse of color. We all fall into that habit of just digging ourselves deeper and deeper into a hole of our own depression. But this by no means you can't claw your way out. I don't know what you've been through, experienced, or lost, but I know for sure that you have the ability that's innate to all humans to fight and overcome. That when you actually start to believe you have a chance will rise. You will fight through that of which I just can't understand, but you will. And once you do that, you will be proud, not of anyone else, right? But of yourself for fighting through it. The first step is acknowledging that you don't have to stand there and watch yourself broken into pieces, but you could start just one by one, picking up those pieces to start rebuilding yourself into a brighter and happier human that everyone can become. This might seem impossible right now, but as some random inventor said, fight as if it's impossible to fail. You won't fail. You're bound by nothing. So start fixing yourself.